Okay, I think we should get started. How does that sound, Andy, Julie? Should we go for it?
Yep, go for it. Green lights across the board.
Great, thank you. So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our first transformative simulation in practice webinar, and part of the reasons these have come about is because we started off quite a few years ago with this specialist interest group into transformative simulation, and the group has grown and grown, and the diversity of people's needs and what they want to either know about it or how to contribute to it has changed over time. And there was a lot of people coming saying, we want to know how transformative sim's being done in practice. And so we felt that it would be really good to have webinars where people can come along and talk about how they're using transformative simulation to make change in practice. And this is our first one, and it's a fantastic one because Julie's been part of the specialist interest group and driving transformative simulation for a number of years now and just done fabulous work in the area. And I think what she's going to talk about in terms of how she's embedded transformative simulation across an entire health board during a very difficult time is it's really inspiring. And we've all just been in absolute awe of what Julie has achieved and is constantly achieving in this area. So I really hope you're going to enjoy this discussion we're going to have today, and at the end you'll have an opportunity to talk with us. So I'm going to hand over to Julie now to get started.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon, for a really lovely introduction. And yeah, it's great to see in the chat people from all over the country and further afield even, which is just great. And the opportunity really to share some of the work and that we've been doing. And yes, I think we have managed to do quite a lot in a short period of time. But as you can see, we're still really ambitious to keep pushing the boundaries, keep expanding the work that we're doing. But I'm also excited to be able to share with you 4 practical examples about how we've used simulations, some kind of pretty mainstream that some of you are probably doing yourselves, and some definitely a little bit more out there, experimenting, trying to use transformative simulation in areas that you might not have thought of. So hopefully that's what we'll manage to achieve. So yes, my name's Julie, and I'm based in as you can see here, the blue section, which is NHS Forth Valley. This is Forth Valley in the very central, in the heart of Scotland. I'm the clinical director of our Scottish Simulation Centre, and we deliver quite a few national simulation initiatives, as well as our local simulation service. We cover 3 different council regions. We have Clacks and Stirling and Falkirk. And as you can see, it's a really beautiful part of the world. Some of you might have seen the Wallace Monument. And yes, as you can see, it's also always blue skies up here in Scotland. So if you haven't been before, you're very welcome. And seriously, though, if any of you are interested in coming and looking at some of the work that we're doing, in particular our Simulation Safety Club, I mean, these guys have been up to visit, and all of you are formally invited to come and see what we're doing. And it's very near to Edinburgh, so if you can get to Edinburgh, it's only half an hour over the bridge. You're so welcome. Next slide, please. But what really the purpose of today's meeting is for you guys, I hope, is to rethink simulation's purpose. I mean, some of you may be quite far down this journey already. Some of you may be using simulation mainly as an educational tool, which, I hasten to add, it's an excellent educational tool, and I'm not for a minute saying stop doing that. But some of you, even within the educational sphere, might have noticed, gosh, it has an impact in a way that's surprising or enlightening to me. And I wonder why that is, as well as your learning objectives. So, but today I want you to really intentionally rethink simulation's purpose. So think about simulation as a tool to transform health and care through collective understanding, insight, and learning. And that's really the definition of what transformative sim is. Next slide, please.
Yeah,
I'm
and
going to just go on, Sharon, going to hand back to you just to talk about the pillars.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Julie's right in terms of our purpose. The more intentional we are, the more impact we can have. And in the transformative simulation framework, we have these 5 foundational pillars. And what they do is really help us ask the questions to make us be more purposeful. You know, why are we simulating this at all? Whose voices do we need in this to make sure we get it right? What participations, behaviours do we need to unearth, or to, you know, to have people involved? And what do we actually have to prepare to make this happen, but also what possibility is there for the change to happen? Because we often have good intentions that we want to make change, but sometimes change isn't always possible as well. So there's a lot of kind of almost values we have to hold before we can really consider using simulation for change. And so if we want to be really intentional in our purpose with it, these are the 5 foundational pillars within the framework that we use. And which Julie is going to go on now to talk about how she does that in her organisation as well.
Thanks, Sharon. So, I mean, if we are rethinking simulation's purpose, you might say, well, what's the point of that? What are we trying to achieve? And this is where I think as a community, we need to be really ambitious. And these are my kind of guiding lights, my purpose, my why, my what, if you like, or our what, our team's what. So it's all about patients. So how do we improve outcomes for patients? Shifting the balance of care, both north and south of the border, and in Wales and in Northern Ireland, I know quite rightly there's a big there's a big emphasis on how we shift the balance of care into the more homely community environment. Simulation can help with this, and I'll show an example about how we've been doing that. Developing our workforce, we all know today of all days, when you know the industrial action is occurring, how we develop a workforce. You know, I'm not saying that all of these things could be solved with simulation, but actually helping people explore what are their values, what they're bringing to their work, what's important to me, you know, having early job planning discussions, you know, going into thinking about workforce planning as well as individuals planning. Simulation can definitely help with this. And again, I've some examples of that. And then how do we align with national and organizational priorities? This is really important. I mean, our transformative sim program was born out of a time where our health board was in escalation, and we were looking at our culture, we're looking at our leadership, we're looking at our governance framework. So it really gave us an opportunity to think, well, how could simulation help kind of solve some of these really tricky problems, or work with some of the other change ideas and projects that we're looking at trying to improve things. And also, if we think about where it is likely to have most impact, then it's really important we know what's important to our organizations and also our national priorities, because they're there for a reason, and actually we can align the work that we're doing into really quite a high level and big scale. Next slide, please. So what have we done? My clinical background is that I'm an emergency medicine consultant. And so when I say that we have a transformative sim or a sim for change emergency response team, I mean an emergency response team. So when our teams reach out to us and say, could simulation help with this problem that I've got? Then we meet with them within 48 hours of the initial request. Now, we don't run the sim within 48 hours because, you know, we have lots of people coming to us at different times. But what we do is we have the initial meeting to understand what the purpose of the transformative simulation is likely to be. And then we actually use a risk prioritization matrix that we've developed alongside our organizations, risk prioritization matrix. And that's really key, so that we prioritize actually, well, which simulation are we going to work with? What's going to be achievable with the resources that we've got? And we make that plan, as I say, within the 48 hours. And because of that, we're actually up to 50 projects now that we've been involved with helping over the last 18 months. Now, we don't own all of those projects before you'll start, your heads explode thinking, well, I can never do that many projects. But actually what we have had is we had initial meetings. Sometimes we don't even need to be involved with running the simulation if there are people who have that skill set within that team. But often what we'll do is we'll do a diagnostic simulation and then come up with a plan about, is simulation going to be part of the solution, or is simulation helped us shine a light on a bit of the system that we didn't look on it in a way that we would have before. Once that initial simulation work's been done, we follow up at 3 months and 6 months so that we get the data from the project to see if we've had the work's had an impact. How we actually operationalize this is we have a monthly steering group meeting, and it's quite a small bijou bespoke team, a couple of people from the Sim Centre and a couple of interested clinicians. We are widening the team all the time, and we now have, as part of our core team, a quality improvement lead, a practice development lead, and we're also just about to recruit an organizational development lead. So it's not just simulationists and educationalists and clinicians. We're widening that spread to think about everybody who's involved in change management. Next slide, please. This is really important. It is going to be most effective, and I think you probably already heard when I talked about aligning with strategic priorities, is that if it must fit in with the governance structure within your organization. So our transformative simulation steering group sits within our quality program board, which sits directly and reports directly to our Forth Valley NHS Forth Valley board. And as well as that, we also have we've got great connections with our board, and we have twice yearly direct presentations to the board where we present our work. So we have quarterly reports that we report into the quality board, and then twice a year we actually go directly to the board to share our work, and there's a huge interest in that. And I think that is really important, and we're really lucky. And again, I can help you if you wonder, well, how did you do this? Who did you speak to? And the Sim Safety Club that we're going to come on to talk about a little bit later is one of the great vehicles for this, because you can invite your senior leaders along to that, and they can actually see in action what you're doing. Next slide, please. So this is what our team spreadsheet looks like. It's just an Excel spreadsheet with a few little tweaks to it. And this is our active projects. This is a couple of months ago now. We've got 9 active projects. So once we've finished the piece of work, then that comes off our active list into our review list, and then we follow up at 3 and 6 months. But I think you can see there's a very wide range of projects we're involved with, from EOBS rollout to frailty scoring within the ED, to our discharge to assess model, to meta skills for high skilled children. So there's a wide range of projects that we're involved with. You can see the urgency. So whether it be within 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, or less than 3 months, and that's color coded accordingly. And our Sprigg score, which is our prioritization score, is anything going from about 70% up to 100% again, which gives us a kind of sense of urgency around each of the projects. And you can see how that's been broken down on the right hand side. The other really important thing to mention in this slide is how the contacts are not the core SIM team. The contacts are the clinicians or the leaders of the projects themselves. So they are the contact person, and they're the person that, again, we'd be contacting for the data and indeed information about how the simulation has an impact on any change or improvement work. Next slide, please. Back to Sharon.
Thanks, Julie. And so getting more a bit into the kind of individual approaches that Julie's used from a transformative sim perspective, Julie said it really beautifully then, that there's times that you want to use the simulation as like a diagnostic tool. There's times that you want to use it to kind of highlight and illuminate areas of practice to kind of have a different understanding of it collectively. And so, and every time that decision is made for the purpose of simulation, there's different kind of lenses we can apply in terms of how we design simulations, because you know that real intentional approach of what we're going to select, abstract and represent through simulation that's going to be really meaningful and impactful, and what are the best kind of lenses we can use to do that. And so we're kind of using this camera analogy to kind of get people to think about, do we need a wide angle lens? Do we need to zoom in and have a look at different things like patterns of behavior? What is it that we need to understand, and how do we design the simulation to really bring to the surface those needs and that purpose? And I think Julie's got 4 fabulous examples that, as she said, are all really different, but I think they will help you to see how those different lenses really help us intentionally achieve bigger impact in what we want to do. So I'll hand back to you, Julie, now.
Thank you. So this project we're really proud of, and this is a way that I'm sure some of you might already have been using simulations. So this is around our deteriorating patient work at the front door of our hospital. So when people come into our front door of the hospital and they're unwell, which they often are, there's a standard operating procedure of what to do when somebody continues to be unwell or deteriorates, or the news score becomes higher. And the team have been working really, really hard, as you can see from the run chart there, lots of interventions, handing over with staff, putting S-bars into place, educational sessions. We had champions within the unit. So amazing work that was going on. But what they were finding that they just couldn't get any real change in practice over the line, despite all the great work that had been going on. So the team came to us and said, well, do you think we could use simulation to help us understand in a kind of diagnostic way, like maybe why the escalation process isn't working in the way that we would hope it to? So going back to kind of first principles, bridging that gap between work as imagined and work as reality, and how sim can do that in a diagnostic way. Sharon's going to come on and talk about the eyes, but very much identifying the problems. So the identification was a big one here. So we got the team together and we ran a simulation that tested the standard operating procedure around escalation for deteriorating patients. And you can see we actually had our quality improvement team there helping as well. And we had a process map where we had some change ideas that kind of actually helped us explore. We had the whole multidisciplinary team there. We had nurses, medics, senior medics, junior medics, and our ward clerk was also there. So we had everybody that kind of understood the process within the real workplace. So from the back of that, we really understood that although the SOP made good sense in theory, actually it wasn't being used quite in the way it was designed. So we the team went away and they changed the SOP to really reflect what we were seeing in practice. And after a bit of discussion, that there was some educational work to do as well. And as you can see from the run chart, that the structured response with 1 hour shifted. So that's a statistically significant difference in structured response within the first hour. And simulation didn't do that on its own. It was part of a really dedicated team that was doing a whole pile of work. But actually it helped unblock that tricky part of the system. It helped work as a little bit of a catalyst, or the oil in the cogs of the wheel, to allow the work to achieve the potential that it deserved to achieve. And so Sharon, I think, is going to reflect on the eyes, the SPIs.
Yeah, and this is a really beautiful example, is like Julie said, that using the identification simulation based intention. So that's drawing on like human factors theories, like she said, work as imagined, work as done, and how you actually illuminate the system there to kind of identify the issues going on. But at the same time, I think what's really powerful about this one is the inclusion aspect, the way that all of the workforce that needed to be involved in this were. And then and that's really important when you're making change, particularly because at the end of the day, it's they're the people who are going to be enacting this. And the reality is that often with interventions and changes, they're kind of forced upon us without us having any ownership in them. I think when you get to use simulation, there's this opportunity to generate the shared mental model around the change in the simulation that makes it much easier to then transfer into practice, because everyone's been part of, first of all, identifying the issues that's happening, but also then being empowered to kind of help make the change come alive. And that's really powerful. So this is a really great example of using both the simulation-based identification and inclusion intentions. But I think Julie illustrated really well there as well, the consideration from the design perspective, but then also how that was delivered, and then how that helps you collect the data that you need to do as well. So it all kind of lines up. Once you know your intentions, you can start lining up design, delivery, data, and debriefing approaches, because you're much clearer on exactly how you're designing these simulations and for what means. I'll hand over to the next one, Julie.
Yeah, so you know already how proud I am of this piece of work that we do. It's really at the core of everything that we do. So we've developed a simulation safety club, and this has several purposes. It does actually have impact on real patient journeys and the way we do things within the organization every month. We run it monthly. However, it's much more than that. And why would I would encourage all of you to start a sim safety club is it's enhanced stakeholder engagement. So everybody that comes to it, from our porters to our healthcare support workers, to the chair of the board, who comes almost every single month. She absolutely loves it. And we've got our chief executive coming for the first time tomorrow. And we've had our senior medics, our senior nurses, our nurse director comes every single month. And we have real teams come as well. So we've had over 500 participants, and it really just helps. We talked about lenses and shining a light on simulation. It helps people understand and helps them reimagine simulation's purpose. So, and it's bigger than the sum of its parts as well, because even though there's been 500 participants, the impact that's had, because these teams go back and they talk about simulation, they talk about using simulation, they talk about the fact that if they've got a problem that, that in terms of, that you might be stuck if you're trying to change something, think of simulation. So it absolutely has spread the use of simulation throughout the culture with Forth Valley in a way that nothing else that we could have done would have had the same impact. So I highly encourage you, if you want to set up a simulation safety club, reach out to me. It's not hard to do. I mean, some of the other pieces of work are pretty tricky and complex, but the Simulation Safety Club, you can start it small, invite a few interested people, and then it will start to grow and grow, and people will come. So basically what we do is we run a simulation that is informed by risk. In Forth Valley, we use something called IR1, which is equivalent to Datex. So, when there's an incident, it's put into our IR1 system, and we can analyze the themes, and we do that. And we do that in combination, excitingly, with our undergraduates who come. So every month we have at least one medical undergraduate, and we've also got up to 3 nursing undergraduates. And they come and they learn about risk, and they learn about human factors, and they learn about simulation, and they learn about simulation as a transformative tool. And they look at IR1s and they come up with ideas. And we use those fresh eyes on the system to come up with ideas where simulation might be able to help. And interestingly, in the last kind of 6 months, the main theme that's coming up again is around professionalism and civility. And we've been running lots of simulations, and on the back of that, we're actually designing a civility and professionalism simulation program. And we've learned so much from that, but we've also got some experience about using simulation in that way, which is exciting. But there's other more standard things that come up as well around prescribing. We all know that's a risk that we carry, and capacity flow and overcrowding. Actually, tomorrow, we're running a really interesting one on internal professional standards and actually how we speak to each other when there's maybe some diagnostic uncertainty or lack of clarity around where people should go within the acute site. So there's lots of really, really interesting topics that come up, and we are literally using it as a vehicle for us to become an effective learning organization. So we take the risks that we actually know are in an organization, we think about it from a transformative simulation perspective, and we deliver that. We make sure we have the appropriate stakeholders involved, both in co-design of the scenarios, but also in terms of the reflective piece when we run our Sim Safety Club. The other thing to say about Sim Safety Club, and you can see there that the cards that are there are the NES NHS Safety Culture cards. So we have an enhanced, you might be interested in, we had a workshop in Aspie, and you might be interested in the role of debriefing in transformative simulation. But what we've learned here is by enhancing the pre-briefing, and these NEST safety culture cards are really an enhanced pre-brief where we work very hard on the relationships and the trust within the room, within Sim Safety Club, and that allows us to get into some of the more difficult, challenging areas that are of risk that our organization's carrying. So there's a lot in Sim Safety Club. It's straightforward, it's simple, but I'm very proud of it. I think we are doing it well, and I'd love to share it with the rest of you. So I'll hand over to Sharon for some reflections.
Yeah, and I have to say, Julie, it's one of my favorite things I've ever witnessed. It was absolutely incredible what you're achieving with this. It's so powerful, and I think it's probably hard for people to even appreciate that until you witness it. It's incredible. And from a simulation-based intention perspective, overall, I'd say the Sim Safety Club is very much about a kind of interventional approach. So where the previous example we had more, you're identifying problems within a system. Here, you kind of know some of the problems already. You know the issues that are there, but you don't know how to really get to the bottom of them, or because often they can be kind of they've got different reasons. So what you do is you design the simulation to show the problem, but then bring everyone together in that inclusion way again to kind of work through how do we solve this issue, how do we talk about it, what's going on, and pick some of it without necessarily knowing what you're going to get from it. So it's quite emergent, the the knowledge and the outcomes that come from it. And I think that's probably what the leadership really like, Julie, isn't it? Is that they come along and they get this, it's not the stuff that's the KPIs or the data they're used to, it's stuff that they can't really capture and they can see it there in real life because people are naming it and saying it. And that professionalism and civility one, I think that would probably bring in a tertiary intention as well from an influence perspective, because it's an opportunity to really start shaping the culture and thinking differently. So when you have got some entrenched cultural issues within an organization, which are quite hard to shift at times for many different reasons, it gives staff the opportunity to come together and pick through some of those tensions and feelings and understand everyone else's perspective, which is a really difficult thing to do, and often there's no time in clinical work to ever do that. So it's given a really safe space for everyone to come together, think about some of the things they've just witnessed in the simulation, how it relates to them, give that kind of, again, shared mental model of what they're focusing on, and then what they need to unpick and think about. But again, one of my favourites, a really great example. So we'll move on to the next one.
Thanks, Sharon. And I did promise you that I would share some of the work that we're doing that is a little bit more out there. So although I'm an emergency medicine consultant by clinical background, for the last few years I've been working as clinical director of integration frailty, and it hasn't just dawned on me. I guess I knew it when I was in ED as well. About the recruitment into social care being a real foundation cornerstone of the NHS, especially moving forward, and how it's not just about getting bodies into the career, it's about actually what are my values, who am I, is a career in social care the right career for me? So we're doing a lot of work with schools, with developing the young workforce, with the National Youth Academy, and with Education Scotland to actually think about working with our teachers, thinking about the curricula and thinking about, well, we've developed a value-based recruitment simulation for our school students, which actually helps them think about what qualities might I bring into social care. So the scenario is based around motivational techniques and goal setting for older people in their home when they've been discharged from hospital. It's absolutely so powerful. And over 300 young people across the Forth Valley area we've worked with from as young as 11, although I would like to go younger. Ideally, I'd like to get into primary schools or maybe even earlier, to try and get people thinking about social care as an amazing career, because it is an amazing career, but it's really hard, I think, to get young people to think about it in that way, and also their families and the culture that surrounds it. So we're working really hard in that area. It's a bit more of a slow burn. We're not going to be able to show you a run chart like we did with the deteriorating patient work, but I know deep down to the core of me, it's aligned with my values in terms of actually really supporting social care as an amazing career and getting the right young people into it. We were just out yesterday, a school just local to our area, and we've got some amazing teachers there. We're looking at working with our education colleagues to think about a specific transformative simulation educational program to help them use simulation in a way, well, they don't use simulation now, but using it in a way that's going to make a real difference. So I think that's really exciting. It's obviously a lot more out there, a lot more diffuse. Probably a lot of you won't have thought about using simulation in that way, but hopefully it will just make one or two of you think, well, oh, if Julie can use it in that way, maybe I could use it in this way, you know. So I think especially around workforce development, about giving people that safe reflective space to think about what's possible, how could we do things differently, and it's just really starting to build now. But I think the momentum that will come from it will hopefully really make a difference to our social care recruitment for young people in the long term.
No, and Julie, I agree with you. I think it's just really wonderful to see, because simulation, it's a bit like Roger and Ebone always said, that we've kind of created this clinical insider frame around it, and actually the opportunities to take it out to people who aren't usually involved in the clinical world, it's really big, and we're seeing more and more people do it for recruitment reasons and stuff, and I think it's fantastic. But from a design perspective, I guess in terms of intentions, it is about influencing that future workforce that's really important for the sustainability of healthcare and to ensure we are getting the right people, like Julie said. So it's how do we use simulation for influence in that way, but also the involvement element is really important. And and I'm sure you'll say this, Julie, but using simulation in this capacity is completely different to doing it within clinical environment in terms of how you think about it. These are people not used to simulation in this way. They bring different things, and you have to think about how you're going to understand what they bring to this. And so I think that involvement lens allows us to think about how we involve people who are not used to being involved in simulation, but also how we get the most out of doing that so that we're not thinking about it too much with a clinical lens completely, but thinking about what they need from the simulation in order to make that influence and that change we want to. But again, great example.
So now we're on to our final example, and this really is my favorite example. You can see that's me with the Zimmer in the bottom left-hand corner, and I've been an ED consultant my whole career, over 20 years, and this was the day I was the happiest. I thought, oh, I've cracked it. This is what it's all about. This is a total success. And the reason I realized that on that day is that we were running a simulation. The background to this is that in the Falkirk region, which is part of Forth Valley, if our senior home carers went out into a person's home and found out that they need a small piece of equipment, such as a toilet seat raise, then they would refer that, they would make a referral to our community occupational therapy service, and they would come out and they would measure up a toilet seat, raise or frame, support frame, and they would deliver that. But unfortunately, the waiting list for that service was between 3 and 6 months for every person. So they were having to wait all that time, not being able to get on and off the toilet safely or often independently. And during that time, with loss of independence, we know that they were losing functionality, they were losing independence, and there's the dignity that's associated, obviously, with being able to independently get yourself to the toilet and back again. So we talked to our teams and said, well, why can't our home care teams do this? And our community AHP colleagues are saying, well, listen, there's a quality assurance issue here. If this is done and it's done wrong and somebody falls off the toilet, then there's a duty of care that we as a profession have. And it came down to professional identity and pride in the professional work, and knowing that actually this was a patient safety issue if it wasn't done right. So I kind of asked the question. I thought, well, this is what mastery learning does. So the evidence base behind mastery learning, although it was designed for things like primary, biliary cirrhosis and surgery and lumbar punctures and chest drains and central lines and more invasive and higher level skill sets, I was thinking, well, this skill set's just as important. It's having just as much impact on people's lives. The fact that we're not able to roll it out to a workforce that would be able to be there, would be able to do it well, as long as we could train them up. So we use mastery-based learning approach, the 7 stages as is described, and we co-designed the program with our OT and our senior carer colleagues within the community setting. And this was us doing our first joint mastery learning triggered assessment course. And there I was playing wee Jessie who couldn't get off the toilet, and I was like, this is amazing. This is actually going to work. We're really going to make a difference to people. And let me tell you, we really did. And normally I ask people to say, how long do you think we saved? But obviously none of you can speak, so I'm just going to have to give you the answer. But the next slide will give you the answer, because in 1 year of the project, we saved 165 years of waiting for the people of Falkirk, waiting for small pieces of equipment. This project's now been running for 3 years, and our waiting time is down to 0 and has been maintained at 0. So we've now saved over 500 years of waiting just for the people of Falkirk. Now, I know not every situation is going to be the same in terms of the waiting lists, etc. So, the impact work won't be as great in every area, but there will be things, tricky parts of the system where you're thinking, I wonder if simulation can help. Because yes, it was mastery-based learning, but it was also understanding. And we did run a diagnostic sim right at the start of the program as well, to really understand where people were coming from, what were the challenges, what were the fears in terms of actually rolling out this skill set. And the next slide, 2 slides forward, Sharon, will tell you actually the impact on real individuals, because this is about patient stories as well. And we alluded to the fact that when you lose your independence to go to the toilet. That's a really, really massive thing. And this is a real person's story as they told us. And that for me is even more powerful than the number of years saved, although that in itself is amazing to hear. So yes, that's the end of the 4 case studies that I wanted to share with you. And thank you so much to Sharon and Andy and the team at ASPI for giving me the opportunity to share, because it is it's really a great privilege to be here. Thanks so much.
Oh, Julie, it's absolutely amazing. And that last one is such a good example as well of how we can use simulation to for transformative simulation to identify change. But that doesn't mean that that often leads into simulation for education, doesn't it? We then have the answers we need to be able to roll it out as an educational tool, which I think is, we see that a lot. Sometimes we see it the other way as well, where people start doing a simulation for education and realize they need the answers first, so then go and do a transformative sim and then back forth until we get it right, don't we? But amazing work. Just kind of to finish up on that as well, then Julie's been doing, as she showed her and the team, huge amounts of work, and we started kind of looking at some of these, and there's a couple of others, not just the ones that Julie mentioned, but kind of mapping them to what of the intentions they aligned with. And why this is really important is that the transformative simulation framework, as we've kind of just walked through, it gives us that purpose in terms of our values and how we're thinking about why we're simulating and who we need to be involved in if what we want to do is achievable. But at the same time, it gives us that lens to be able to think about how we design it effectively so it's really impactful. And that also gives us a kind of governance ready framework. And what we mean about that is it's quite complex in a lot of ways, but it's complex because it's connecting us all in terms of, to make change requires a huge amount of knowledge and experience. And we've got all that within our healthcare systems. It's just sometimes we don't have the space to bring us together to be able to figure it out. And what we feel the transformative simulation framework enables us to do is really a really focused way to make the complex work that clinicians and educators in healthcare do really visible and valued. But then from a kind of academic and researcher's perspective, it really helps to think about how we collect that data and how we research what's happening, but also have more of that kind of conceptual work that can then be taught and passed over to other people who want to come into the field from other disciplines, working with our human factors, quality improvement, safety, culture, OD, all of them. They've all got fantastic models and theories, and it helps us use the simulation and work with them to really apply those models to the simulation. And we saw some great examples there, particularly from the human factors stuff in terms of the identification, but also from the culture and the safety elements in terms of some of the more inclusive work that was done. And then with our industry and technology partners, the hope is that if we have a coherent language, it really helps to situate the products or the tools that are being developed and really gives that value and impact for us to be able to demonstrate that to the powers that be who are, have the resources to invest further. And I think Julie illustrated it really well, but, in terms of leaders and policies and stuff, it gives them an opportunity to see what's happening on the shop floor, to be part of it, but also a bit of a framework to be able to situate it and see how it's kind of has a structure. It's stopping duplication because it's actually connecting and bringing everyone together to solve problems. And as we said as well, it's often a great way to make change because the change isn't being kind of imposed upon people, it's being done together. So that's really where we stop now. We've got a lot of resources online at the ASPI website, but please come along. You can come and join our groups as well. We have different groups forming to kind of take this work forward because there's a lot of work to do in it, and it needs all of us to do it. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion now. We've got some time left before we get going. But just I did see quickly in the chat that someone asked if this was going to be recorded, and it is being recorded and it will go on this website so that you can go on and we will start having some really good examples of how transformative simulation is being done in practice. So thank you. Now I've just got to figure out how we do the questions. Do you know how to do it, Andy?
No, I don't. But while you're figuring it out, I've been biting my tongue.
Go.
Listening to this, so full of quotable quotes, Julie. I love the idea of simulation as a catalyst to unblock the sticky parts of the system. And a lot of this is about simulation as a means of empowering people to gather together and all the rest of it. So there's been comments in the chat. I think the first one was possibly from Peter about patient safety. not being specifically on your list on like the very first slide. And I would argue that as the Sim Safety Club demonstrates, that's partly because, and I know Bryn's on the in the meeting as well, and he'll have opinions on this. Patient safety really leaks into everything, just like communication does. And if it doesn't have an impact on patient safety, you probably shouldn't be doing it. But I think that what I wanted to say before we open it up to question is what you're demonstrating really clearly is that people do not need to just copy your specific examples, except maybe the Sim Safety Club. What you're demonstrating is the beacon power of simulation to speak to other people and bring other people in and gather people together. And each of us will have our own problem that this sort of approach will help illuminate. And that's the value of it, rather than, you know, doing their own small equipment ordering thing or whatever. It's the generalizability of what you've done that is really useful, I think. Have you worked it out yet, Sharon?
So I believe that I've unmuted or put everyone's cameras up. So I think we can go ahead and talk. And so if anyone's got any questions for Julie that's not in the chat, they want to ask directly. Let.
Yeah, Bryn put it in the chat, but I've also put it in the Q&A function. Thank you very much, everyone, for presenting, talking, and adding their thoughts so far. Julie, it was if you could expand on the prioritization matrix, please. That I think is something that's quite useful to understand a bit more of.
Yeah, so we've modified it from our organization's Sprig prioritization matrix. It's just what they use for any business case that comes in. So if somebody wants to set up a new service or you know, buy a new medication or whatever, I don't know if we can make it larger, but you know, there's the 6 different priorities that they score. And there's various you know, it sits underneath the governance board within our organization. So when I was speaking to our medical director about, you know, the fact that we were really wanting everyone to come to us, yep. So the value, how I can't actually read it myself. It's a bit too small. Sorry, but you can probably read it easier for me. The various different things. So that's the Sprig prioritization matrix that they use, but we just adapted it for our simulation, transformative simulation projects. I don't know that it's perfect. I said to Bryn, I think that it would be quite nice, and I think people on this call would be perfect to kind of have comments on it. Well, I might like to have this in, or I might like to have this a little bit more weighted, because it's not something we validated or really testing. It's what we're using, and we use it, and it seems to work quite well for us. And how we do it is the person that initially gets a referral from our steering group, we'll fill out the prioritization matrix, and then we'll bring it to our transformative sim steering group, and we'll go through, and everyone will say, well, actually, I think the value of that or the impact work of that is such and such and such and such. And then we'll tweak it and we'll have it almost co-designed. And I think that will become stronger as now we're expanding our steering group from purely simulationists, transformative simulationists, into, we're going to now have quality improvement people, we're going to have people from our culture team, and we're going to have people from our practice development team as well. So as we strengthen our transformative sim group, I think that will strengthen our matrix. But in terms of actually what we use in the scoring and how we weight them, because there is the ability to weight different parts of the matrix as well, I think I would value other people's thoughts about it. And as I say, it's been lifted from our business case Sprig prioritization matrix, which we use within our organization, which I'm sure every organization has something quite similar. But if we could strengthen it by bringing more of a safety or human factors lens, then I think it could be even better.
Thanks, Julie.
While we're waiting for any other questions on that, yeah, and I think that's something. Oh, go on, Brim.
It sort of follows from that point, Julie. So thanks very much for giving me a chance to actually see some of this stuff at last. But I'm interested in how bringing people together within the safety club or within your oversight group who have got different perspectives actually get to see that actually the thinking that you're introducing, or the tests of exploring an issue or maybe finding ways through it, actually relate to several different colleagues who have different remits within the organization. So I think pertinent to the point made in the chat earlier, we don't see patient safety listed, and Andy prompted me, so I'm going to say something. I think we are very good in organizations at putting pieces of work into silos. And therefore, the HR workforce department don't necessarily think about productivity and flow. But of course, we work in complex organizations, and there's no way that they can be separate. So having an opportunity such as you've described, that helps people get into a slightly more cohesive conversation about some of these things, and perhaps using simulation as a bit of a glue to hold that conversation together and move it forward, I think becomes a really rich way of working and thinking, which at the moment I think people haven't necessarily got the luxury to do. So I'm just interested in your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I just totally agree with everything that you've said. And I think the thing that it does is it gives us a vehicle that gives us permission to do this regularly, and also gives people permission to come. And that's where the strategic and organizational alignment is really important, so that actually it keeps high on everybody's agenda. But the reality of why it works is exactly what you've described. And the psychological safety, holding that psychological safety, but allowing people to bring their real stories, their real experiences, and giving them the gift of being able to actively listen to each other in a way that, like you're saying, because we're all working hard in our own silos, round and round and round, sometimes it feels like. So yeah, that's exactly what it does. But I think it's giving us all permission to do it, because the data that we've got on the output shows that it's helping us be a better learning organization. Nobody can disagree that it's not a good thing to do. Everybody agrees it's a great thing to do, and people come and they keep coming. And it surprises me, doesn't really surprise me now, but it delights me every month when people keep coming and keep making it a priority, even when things are the way they are for everyone just now, with flu and all the rest of it, and winter pressures starting to hit. People are still coming, and it's still happening tomorrow, and we've got 25 people coming, which is just so great.
Yeah, and I think there is something about, we do it, the categorization and everything, because we want to simplify everything, don't we? Because it makes us feel a bit more safe and secure because it's so complex. But sometimes it is nice just to embrace the complexity, and that's what the sim allows us to do a little bit, doesn't it? It's right. Whereas with any other approach, you really do have to kind of simplify things. But you can allow it to emerge that complexity, which is kind of the beauty of simulation. So, any more questions? Rose.
Thank you. So interesting. And yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around the Sim Safety Club, but brilliant. You say that you respond to any requests within 48 hours. Are these all safety related only? And how do you manage that if the lines are blurred, or is it always quite straightforward?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question. Thank you very much for it. It's really good. No, I'd say 80% of them aren't what you would call directly safety related. I mean, the Sim Safety Club is about safety, but the requests for help, you can see in the active list there, we've got embedding TEP, treatment escalation planning in clinical practice. We've got EOBS rollout. We've got clinical event debriefing in psychiatry. So yeah, of course, all of them have impacts on patient safety, but nobody's bringing them as a patient safety issue. These are clinical problems that teams are interested in making better. So they come as kind of part of improvement work or change ideas. I mean, sometimes there's been a safety incident that has stimulated changes, but often not. Often people just are, as we're always doing, trying to make things better for our teams and our patients. So mostly they don't come through, an actual patient safety lens, but of course they all do have impacts on patient outcomes and safety. I hope that answers your question. In terms of, are they all straightforward and is there complexity and blurring? None of them are straightforward, because that's the complex kind of messy world of healthcare that we work in. But what simulation does do, and I think that the initial meeting is helps us explore, well, what is the purpose? And that's where the framework's really helpful as well, with that evidence base and allowing us to look at things, using that a little bit of clarity there. So we help kind of try and unpick, well, what is it that you're trying to do? How could simulation help with that? And then once we understand, then sometimes it's an intervention. And like, for instance, we did a piece of work recently around delirium, identification of delirium at the front door, and that was almost like an educational intervention. It wasn't, of course, because we were running it in situ, and there was things around documentation, etc., that started to emerge. But other times, yes, like the mastery-based learning piece, that was really, that shone a light on a real degree of complexity and understanding about why we weren't able to implement something that seemed intuitively the right thing to do. So it maybe doesn't answer it in a neat way, but I think it does reflect the complexity of the system that we work within. And that's why it's exciting, because you really never know when you get that first email, what are you going to discover and what conversations are you going to have and where might simulation add value? Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Fantastic. So we've got another hand up. Who have we got? Jaladari?
Yes, thanks. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, for the presentation. Great initiative. I was wondering, how do you see digital simulation tools helping you to implement your simulations at a scale and make it more accessible? Thank you.
So I'm very much a learner in this space, but I have been using recently a great tool that our Laerdal colleagues are developing using AI to help with scenario design. So I'm finding that really exciting and interesting, and I think there's great potential. I think I heard your question being around digital scaling up. I wonder if you've got any thoughts about how we might do that. I haven't any experience about it. I mean, I really have to hold my hands up. I think the way that we're going to interface with digital and AI, especially in the transformative simulation space, we're only just starting to scratch the surface. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, there'll be people with a lot more experience than I do about, we'll see opportunities that maybe we're only just starting to understand. So I guess I see it as a we must collaborate. We must collaborate with our industry partners, with our geniuses within healthcare who understand it a lot better. But I think not at the core must be we mustn't lose the patient at the center. We mustn't lose the importance of psychological safety, and we mustn't lose relationships and trust, which we know are the things that will really make a difference. But they're just my initial reflections. I think the opportunities, and I think that landscape will look totally different in 5 or 10 years than the way it does now.
I could maybe say it from my perspective as well, and I agree with Julie. I think there's this huge potential, and it's going to happen probably quicker than we realise. But some of the complexity that Julie's talking about, in terms of how we bring people together and how we design these simulations, that aren't maybe so much like the educational approach where you can make one design and you can roll it out against a lot of people because you've got the best practice and you know what you want. But when you're doing simulation for change, there's a lot of contextual local things that you have to pick up, and it comes through it. And I think some of the beauty of it is first of all helping design that and bringing those different lenses together and having those intentions clear. But secondly, it's not always about having the predetermined outcomes as well, which we're often used to doing in educational simulation with like learning outcomes that you can then quite easily collect data for, or evaluation, or know if you're doing it right or wrong. But with transformative simulation, as we said with the Sim Safety Club, but other areas, it's often the emergent stuff. So you need to find a way to design the sim that allows that focus, that intention to let that stuff emerge that's going to be really useful, and then find a way to collect it. And I think AI is going to transform that, because that still is quite complex at the moment. And you need really incredible people like Julie who can unpick that complexity and with her team do it. But I think going forward, that will make that a lot more scalable and easier to do. Hope that's answered your question, Beth.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
I can weigh in on that conversation as well, because I think there's something around how we, as a community, a simulation community, embrace, emerging technology and AI and etc. But also, I think there's the recognition of how that technology is going to transform clinical practice and the care that we deliver and how we deliver care. And we know we've got the Fit for the Future plan, analog to digital, and etc. And one of the projects that's happening where we are at the moment is we're working with a research team looking at and using simulation for change, looking at AI-powered translation to support translation in clinical practice. But we have to measure the tool itself, how useful it is, etc., and being able to use simulation to kind of support that in order to support clinicians and practitioners with that kind of change in practice. So I think there's definitely like lots of scope and lots of possibilities if we think about it from both sides as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's this real interesting thing that's going to happen where there is a great marriage between simulation and AI for lots of reasons. It's kind of like, in my opinion, simulation's the conduit for AI. But there's a lot of work we all have to do to kind of get our heads together as to how we want it to be used in that way, and make sure it kind of goes forward in the way that we want to shape the future of healthcare and what we do. But great opportunities. Is there any other hands? No, well, I think we're coming to the end of the session. Julie, I just wanted to say thank you so much. Obviously your work's always inspiring, but every time I hear it, I just get really excited, and I think everyone else is the same. Is there anything else you want to end on before we finish?
No, just thank you again for the invitation, and actually the really amazing questions as well, and the brilliant comments in the chat. I'm sorry I haven't responded to all of them personally. There's so much there, but please, hopefully Sharon can share my email and just reach out to me if there's anything that you'd like to collaborate together with. And thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we will do, Julie. We'll send an email around for everyone, and please do go on the web page, as we said, and look things up and get involved. We need everyone to be involved in this. And just to say, we've got another one coming up in 2 months' time, and as Rose is here, I don't know if you want to introduce it, Rose.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about transformative simulation. There you go, that's a spoiler. But about how we've been using it at UHD in Dorset to open a new building. So it'd be some about what I spoke about at the ASPE conference, but a little bit more in depth as well. Yeah, lots of differing techniques and appreciating what different teams have needed and how we've adapted over the time as we've learned.
Fantastic, great. Well, we'll see you in a couple of months then. Everyone else, if you're celebrating Christmas and New Year, enjoy, have a great one, and we'll see you all in the new year. Thank you very much. Bye.